Hello, everyone. This is John Simonson, Wild Rivers Trout Unlimited chapter. Today, we'll continue our Wisconsin DNR fishery biologists in Northwest Wisconsin reports with the report for the South Shore Tributaries by Paul Piszczek and Sam Peterson. Welcome, gentlemen. Please take it over.
Yeah, thanks, John. So like you said, my name is Sam Peterson, and I'll be taking over the first portion of this talk, focusing on some of the fishery aspects of the South Shore tributaries. And one of the first annual monitoring programs that we do here out of the Superior Office is the trend and rotation surveys. So we have just under 120 stations that we get to across 55 different streams in a span of 12 years. And so this map here is just color coded to show you how the streams and their frequency that we get to. So those yellow ones are every 12 years, kind of a fish community check. Those 6 years in red, and then those annual stations that we call trends that we get to each field season. So the table on the right was from 2024, just gives you a brief rundown of the different station types and the number of surveys that we completed. And we're going to focus in, kind of zoom in a little bit on the Bayfield Peninsula area and look at the trend stations. So those icons highlighted in blue show the 8 stations we get to every year. And we kind of scripted, we kind of wanted to have a better spatial distribution to get a better handle on what the status of our fisheries are. So we wanted to incorporate some new additions from some previous stations to add to kind of bolster our data sets. So those icons highlighted in red are going to be the new stations that we're going to get to, as well as the blue stations every year. And in 2025 is our scripted number of proposed stations that we're going to hopefully get out and do some surveys on. And so what those surveys look like are their single pass backpack electrofishing surveys, and those give us a representative index of what the fish abundance looks like in these streams. And we can, as long as we are providing the consistent year-by-year methods, and we can compare those year to year to look at long-term trends. So giving you an example, we're going to go by an individual stream first, and then we're going to break it down and then broadcast it to the Bayfield Peninsula whole. Reading these 3 figures from left to right, we're focusing on brook trout for this presentation. And if you'd like to reach out to me with my contact info at the end of this presentation to look into more coho, rainbow trout, and brown trout data, please feel free. But for the purposes of this study, I'll be looking at brook trout. You'll notice that there's some variable recruitment year to year, and that's difficult to track those year classes through time. So for instance, in 2006, when you have a high density of number of fish per mile of that first spawning year class of brook trout, you look at 2007 for the age 1, that same year class, and that doesn't necessarily correlate to a stronger number of fish that recruited through and stayed through that system. Same thing with age 2s. You're still seeing them within that red line, which we just have as the median number of fish we see year after year. So it's difficult to interpret 1 year class of success and try and predict that through time. So what we're getting at is these streams are highly variable, and there's a lot of factors going on. So you kind of have to take these figures with a grain of salt. So this is for the East Fork of the Flag River. And now that we're expanding it to all 8 of our trend stations, so these are all calculated densities across all 8 of our stations. And through time, you still see that relationship. So that there really isn't, it really isn't any. You still see quite a bit of variation from year to year. However, this last summer field season, we did see our second highest recorded number of age 2 brook trout per mile, which is always exciting to see. And we're going to continue to monitor that through time and see how that tracks for future recruitment. So with this information, we always like to refine and develop the work we do, and can we relate that to adult populations out in the lake? And so Part of the work that we're doing is incorporating that with some of the bayfield work that they do out in the main lake. And so we're always doing that in the background and hopefully reporting that out in the future. So one way that you can combat stabilizing some of that early year class recruitment is through habitat projects. And we have a recent opportunity that we started last summer to get a handle on our methods and how successful we were, and we're going to be beefing that up a little bit this next summer. So what that's called is a channel narrowing project, and the idea is to provide a long-term, cheap opportunity to expose some of that hard substrate that could be embedded underneath a lot of the sand inputs that we see in these South Shore streams. So by kind of necking down the stream and increasing velocity to move a lot of those sand grains to the use of sandbagging, we can hopefully get at that. And we're going to be expanding the bench of the bank out and kind of backfilling that in with brush bundles and sand. And we have 2 locations we did last summer, and we're scripted to do 5 more pending all approved permit applications. And I won't go into some of the nitty-gritty details of our methods for this presentation, but kind of the end results of what this looks like is we kind of have that photo on the left is the upstream end facing downstream, where we necked that channel where you see on the left-hand side that increase in velocity and a little more substrate exposure, and backfilling it with the brush bundles and rocks and logs and stuff. And so on the photo on the right, we have a mounted trail cam on the downstream end of this 100-foot section that we've looked at to assess the sediment transport through time. So we're going to continue to monitor that and get to some new locations this next summer. And that's always a volunteer opportunity to get some people to get out and do some exciting filling of sandbags. But it all goes towards a greater effort of those cold water fish species utilizing that hard substrate, which is preferred for those year classes to take advantage of and have higher recruitment potential. So another aspect of our fisheries across the South Shore, of course, is the Brule, right? And many of you are aware of the fish weight counts and the reporting that we do every fall and spring. And something to help supplement that is assigning ages to those lengths and counts of fish that we see swimming through the window. And the electrofishing survey for fall steelhead helps get at that, right? So by the use of collecting scales and assigning an age to that, then we could extrapolate those ages to the lengths of fish that we see swimming through the window. And so this is just a rundown of some of the summary statistics that we saw at the fall steelhead electrofishing survey, and we broke it up on that top left table by the number of species we found, minimum maximum lengths that we saw, and the bottom left figure is just our length frequencies. So that gets at the number of fish that we saw and then the length ranges into a little more visual plot for you to digest. And when you compare that to the long-term length at age data set that we have, we have over 8,000 fish that we've aged in 38 years doing this fall electrofishing survey. So although there's levels of error at each age, we have a pretty good estimate of how old a steelhead is going to be at the length that you catch it at. So for instance, if you catch a 26-inch fish, it's going to be probably between 6 and 7 years old. So these fish begin to return from the lake into the stream to spawn around age 3 and 4. So they have potentially a couple years to provide the spawning opportunities to add to the population before they reach that harvested angling opportunity. And then we have just some photos from this last fall. We have Coho from Logan Cutler, one of the fish biologists over in Brule, our fish technician here in Superior, Reed Castelny holding steelhead, and then I was holding a 31.6-inch steelhead. I think that was the biggest we found this last fall. Brief update on the Brule Fishway. So we did just publish this report. You'll find it on our Brule DNR webpage. But the accounts were a bit down from below average or long-term average this last fall. However, of course, there's many factors to keep in mind, right? And for instance, I think a good example is the variation in rainfall that we saw, right? Like in June, we had a great impulse of flooding in almost all of our South Shore streams, and kind of a dry spell this fall. I think we had one weekend of rainfall that actually related to an increase in coho that the next couple days after that we saw in our observation window. So that cue that really helps drive some of these fall migrants wasn't there. So something to keep in mind. But although we did find a really strong proportion of fall run, some of those younger, what we call jack steelhead. So potential future strong year classes to come. And with the less rainfall in the fall, we're anticipating a higher proportion of lake run steelhead this next spring. And we're actually just about to get our recorded a fishway video up and running in the next couple weeks, and anticipate to get that report out in June or July. So keep that on the back burner. But as far as the physical structure of the fishway, we're continuing to do renovations and keep this thing maintained. This last fall, we were able to contract out a new fence, remove the original fencing, and just added some additional safety capabilities here with some beefier fencing and some clear signage. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Paul Piszczek.
Thank you very much, Sam. And continuing on the South Shore tributaries, I'll expand out from the Brule. And what you're looking at here is a map of all of our South Shore tributaries, particularly those that are in black. Those black lines are the Lake Superior tributaries that flow basically north in most cases. And that's typically a reference point flowing upstream or north or downstream or south. You know, those two types of references often get confused. So keep an eye on those tributaries flow as they flow north and downstream, and south as upstream. So those black tributaries, again, those are managed under Lake Superior trout fishing regulations. And you can see that they span from the west near Minnesota all the way to the east on the far right of the map toward the state of Michigan. And I'll just add that in those tributaries, you can find all kinds of different species, some of which Sam has already touched on, namely the steelhead, coho, and brown trout. So I just put some pictures on here for you all to see the types of fish that you might encounter as you're fishing these South Shore tributaries, whether it be the Brule, the East Fork of the Flag River, or the Cranberry River, or the Sioux River, which is, let's see if we can follow the track eastward toward Ashland, Washburn, and Bayfield, Little Sioux River, the Onion River, and Fish Creek. So an interesting tool that the state of Wisconsin uses or puts out there for trout anglers is this Trout Regulations and Opportunities User Tool, or TROUT in acronym. And you can see the link there in the upper right of the screen. So we have that tool, and when you use that, you can wave your cursor over the top of each tributary, and it will give you the regulations, bag limits, seasons, and so forth that you would otherwise see in the trout regulations pamphlet, a photo of which is in the upper right corner. So you have two opportunities to review the regulations and find the streams that flow into Lake Superior, both in paper format and online. I encourage you to try that trout tool online. It's really helpful, pretty snazzy, and it has a lot of information. I'll touch a little bit on coast or brook trout. The state of Wisconsin is involved pretty much in a larger scale framework around Lake Superior to work on coast or brook trout rehabilitation. It's been in the works for almost 2 decades now. And what we typically do is work within a framework under the Fish Community Objective, which is Great Lakes Fisheries Commission's mandates to have various fish community objectives around Lake Superior. And you'll see that box there on the left-hand side of the screen, along with a URL internet address that you can take a look at that. And basically, the brook trout fish community objective is to maintain a widely distributed, self-sustaining population in as many of the historical habitats as is practical. And that means a lot to all of the organizations around Lake Superior. Specifically in Wisconsin, we work among those agencies to do research projects such as genetic identification and ancestry analyses. And we do this in collaboration with, say, Minnesota DNR, Michigan DNR, and various academic institutions like Michigan State helps run the analyses on these to determine the genetic ancestry. Trout Unlimited is very, very active collaborator as well in this effort. And specifically in the state of Wisconsin, how we get at this coastal brook trout is to conduct non-routine tributary surveys. In addition to the surveys that Sam had discussed with you, the tributaries also have opportunities just to have a la carte surveys. So if we just happen to be out on a trend or rotation station and see another tributary that has not been or that we're not familiar with, that we will take a look at that, especially if it has potential for coastal brook trout. And we also have occasional Lake Superior shoreline surveys where staff will take the boom electrofishing boat and basically cruise along the shoreline of Lake Superior in September and October when those opportunities exist and look for coastal brook trout. So we have those two surveys available to us as tools to help discuss and determine the distribution, abundance, size structure of any coastal population that we do have in Wisconsin. The densities are fairly low in Wisconsin compared to other South Shore states such as Michigan and Minnesota. And that's mostly because there's a lot of habitat limitations that exist here in Wisconsin, namely the sand that Sam had pointed out earlier in that part of the presentation. So during those surveys, like I mentioned earlier, we do collect samples for genetic analysis. Moving from coastal brook trout, I'm going to move into some another project actually that Wisconsin DNR was heavily involved with, and it's a major fishery habitat renovation project. And fisheries is often consulted from other DNR programs as well as external partners to talk about what projects can be conducted where to benefit fishery resources. And in this case, you can see this little Balsam Creek. It's in the red box in the lower to middle left side of the image. And that's a stream that contains brook trout. And you can see here, taking a look at these two pictures, you have multiple age classes and size classes of brook trout that use this stream. It's a really nice stream about 30 minutes or so south of the city of Superior. And taking a look at that photo in the middle upper of the frame, you can see the really nice watershed characteristics. You have nice side slopes that are vegetated and with trees and the rocks and the stream width and everything else that you kind of have a picturesque look at a brook trout stream in that part of the state. And with the little Balsam Creek, though, we have that nice look to the watershed. It does have its infrastructure and other natural problems that require a little bit more management action. And that Patsu-Foxborough Road washout was from the flood of 2018. And that washout deposition actually ended up further downstream. And you can see that in the center image, where a lot of that material ended up being deposited. And from those deposits, the stream channel had to cut itself through. And you can see that ensuing straight line channel. And in addition to the washouts that happen with the road infrastructure, the embankments themselves are unstable throughout the watershed. So in addition to that picturesque look of a nice stable embankments, you also have fairly high embankment failures. And that's on the order of 25 to 30 feet in some cases in height. So in Little Balsam Creek, there's a lot of interest in this, especially from fisheries management, about maintaining those brook trout populations. And so among the various road crossings, there was also a state trail crossing. This is called the Gandy Dancer State Trail. And you can see the image on the left, which is the trail crossing as you're approaching with an ATV or other summer recreational mode of transportation, like a bicycle. And otherwise, in the summer, winter time, it is a snowmobile trail. However, beneath that decent trail is a deteriorated culvert and stream channel, and that's Little Balsam Creek. And so you can see the potential for fish habitat impediments. The water's really shallow, it's fast, and it's a long distance, almost 200 feet, without any specific habitat features until you see them in that middle section of the photographs here. But that culvert's been there for a long time. It's a legacy railroad grade, and that was built to last. However, when we were approached, we as fishery staff were approached to talk about what types of projects to get involved with. This was one of the main ones because the interest from the state trail was just to put a liner in the culvert and rehabilitate the culvert itself. But with fisheries concerns, specifically for brook trout, we went forward with a pretty massive undertaking in the summer of 2024 to remove the culvert and the embankment and install a bridge. And I'll show you those photographs here in just a moment, with the bottom part now showing the partners that were involved in this project, namely the Area of Concern Program, Fisheries Management, and Parks and Recreation from the Wisconsin DNR, as well as the Department of Administration and the town of Summit. So these are a couple of photographs of during the construction effort. You can see the magnitude of the culvert itself, the amount of concrete, the amount of earth that needed to be moved out of there in order to recreate a stream channel that was daylighted and open for what will become a more naturalized stream channel after a couple of years. And then this is how it ended up turning out. So if you can recall the trail that's walked across the channel from an earlier part of the slides, you can see this new trail, which is now spanned or connected by a bridge, and the stream channel daylighted and flowing naturally through its own corridor. And like I said, it's going to take a couple of years for it to really develop and mature into a more naturalized looking channel with plant growth and trees and the like. And also on Little Balsam Creek, fisheries was involved in removing other potential fish habitat or fish passage barriers. And these were 3 road stream crossings that were actually downstream from the Gandy Dancer State Trail that in 2012, you can see their condition. And throughout time, these culverts had blown out basically with the floods of 2016 and 2018. And what we ended up doing was converting these into single pipe, basically bottomless arch culverts. And these culverts allowed for more efficient passage of the stream channel through the road stream cross or through the road crossing. And these culverts span nearly 20 to 25 feet in width. And you can see a little bit of the scale if you look at the vehicles in the images, and County Highway B at the bottom left and Patsu-Foxborough Road, the bottom right, to get an idea of the size of these culverts. And so with all of these culverts improvements that we've made, including the Gandy Dancer State Trail, we now have a free-flowing 1-mile section that's wide open to fish passage, particularly for brook trout. Now we do get rainbow trout that come up here from Lake Superior, and also allows their fish passage as well. And finally, I'll call your attention to the URL at the top right of the frame, and that is a YouTube video that was produced by the state of Wisconsin to talk about what these projects were all about. And Sam Peterson is featured in there, as well as a couple of our other temporary fishery staff. So I encourage you to take a look at that and get more information on those Little Balsam Creek projects.
So we'll just kind of wrap things up by looking at our projected work for 2025. And so the 3 aspects of a fishery: habitat, social, and fish portions of what we're going to be covering. And so I briefly mentioned that for our habitat, we're going to be proposing those five different locations for our channel narrowing projects. And that's really our currently our opportunity for this next summer for habitat or volunteer opportunities to get involved in. Please reach out to me or Paul, and we could potentially get you scripted to come out, get your boots on the ground and be able to fill some sandbags and help us continue to neck down these channels and expose some of that hard substrate for these trout and salmon to take advantage of. Otherwise, we have quite a few different outreach locations that we get out to, and just whether it's conferences or the Douglas County Fish and Game Expo. We have other Trout Unlimited presentations that we give throughout the winter, and whichever local club reaches out, we're happy to provide information and then just have conversations with people. And yeah, it's just another great opportunity to get out and have that one-on-one conversation. So from a fisheries aspect, this next summer, more trend and rotation sampling in that first table kind of describe what some of those efforts are proposed to look like. We have more beaver pond electrofishing research that we're still in development with, but we just constructed a canoe electrofisher to get in at these beaver impoundments and look at the fish community and try to relate those numbers with downstream populations without having to notch that dam to get at mitigate any of that skewed potential when you mix up the turbidity within that impoundment when you start to notch it. So more development there and some work to come. But along with our Brule Fall Steelhead Survey that we run every year, we're also going to be incorporating a Brule Summer Brown Trout Survey, getting at starting to peer into some more research on interactions of adult brown trout migration patterns and what their population dynamics look like in the Brule and its tributaries. And just like what Paul had mentioned with our coaster brook trout partnerships, we've been in talks on a watershed scale, focusing on brook trout, coaster lake run, coaster brook trout relationships, and how we can incorporate that with the stream data that we're collecting, and more conversation there to be had. So some exciting stuff coming forward, and a few opportunities to reach out and assist with us. And as always, we're here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam and Paul. That was terrific. Wild Rivers Trout Unlimited would love to help you with any of those projects in 2025. So let us know how we can help, and we'd be glad to help you with it. Thank you very much.